Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining me here on Poe on the Go here on Sunday, August the 27th. Tonight we have an amazing episode for you. I hope that you all enjoy it, and hopefully you learn quite a bit from this one. But you know how this starts. We bring in our buddy from Clearwater, Florida, give us the weather report before we get everything going. How we doing, Chad?
Good, Poe. Thanks for having me do the weather.
Let's
get right to work.
Excellent.
All right.
Excellent.
Temperature in Clearwater, Florida is 85 degrees, Poe. The wind is at 6, 80% humid, and the dew point is at 7. Back to you, Poe.
Excellent. And I've kept Roscoe away from that chopper, so we don't have to worry about that. So
very good.
That's a very important part. You ready for tonight?
Absolutely. I'll be watching.
All right. Well, Chad's going to go back in the shadows for a little bit here while we get ready to go, and I'm going to introduce our next guest. Quite an esteemed career as a private investigator. He is a legend within the SPTV verse. I can't say enough about how honored I am to have him as a guest on Poe on the Go here. He's also live streaming on his channel as well. And you know what, without further ado, let's bring him in, the man himself, Mr. Jeffrey Augustine.
Hey,
how are we doing, Jeff?
Good. How you doing, Chief?
Good.
Great to be on your show. Thank you for the very kind introduction.
Oh, it's all from the heart, sir. From the heart.
Thank you. Likewise, admire your work. And this is outstanding to have a chief of police, former retired chief of police, and a private investigator looking into Scientology.
Yes.
But before we begin, in the interest of full disclosure, Chief,
yes, sir.
I have to disclose I did an investigation on you.
Oh no.
Look at
You're
that.
You're going to get me declared, Jeffrey.
What I found, what the file, let me get it here. The Poe file clearly indicates that you're a suppressive person.
Yeah, I know. I went beyond PTS. That's for sure.
Well, you know what happens when you cross over onto YouTube and you go public? The church's Office of Special Affairs takes notice, and they might get some PIs.
Yes.
So, and that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
And we're going to begin.
Tonight is our first episode in busting the myth of the Scientology private investigators.
Correct.
And that has led to the big exposure the big announcement you're going to make a little bit later in this stream when you were investigating another PI and found some very interesting text messages they had been sharing.
True. So, well, let's start.
Yes, sir. So for those who don't know you, which I don't see how they don't, can you give us a little bit about your history in Scientology and what led you to this point?
Sure. Back in the early 80s, I had I'd left the Christian church, and I was interested in past lives. So one of my clients said Scientology, does past lives. So maybe you'll go there and look at it. So it was, I was a young man interested in metaphysical things. And here's what happened. When I left university, I worked at Hughes Aircraft in the Cold War as a technical writer. And I worked on teams and we worked on radar systems and guided missile systems for the DDG class guided missile destroyers. So I had top secret clearances.
Wow.
And I just worked on teams, as a low level writer, but we worked on teams with engineers, and we wrote manuals so that our military at sea, the Navy, could operate, protect carrier battle groups. Anyway, to get my top secret clearances, I had to go and I was polygraphed by the Department of Defense and the FBI. And back then in the Cold War, if you remember that whole mindset, it was like part of the questions were, are you a communist? Are you a homosexual? Have you been to Russia? Has your family been to Russia? Have you been arrested for anything you're not telling us? Do you use drugs? Is there anything for which you could be blackmailed? And all, these were long and tense, and you're hooked up to a polygraph.
To give you an idea, in 1987, when I went through the the top secret clearance for myself with the United States Army, a lot of those questions were still on there.
Yeah, yeah, they wanted. Well, back then, it was so closeted. There, uh, even LGBTQIA, they were viewed with suspicion. It shows how much progress was made. But back then, they thought a gay man could be blackmailed, or a gay woman could be blackmailed. It just that was the mindset of the Cold War, the paranoia on both
Oh
sides.
yeah.
So anyway, what that was an intelligence apparatus, and then when I went to work in Hughes, we had program officers from the military that would supervises the programs like the SPS-52C radar is what I worked on, one of my programs, along with Roland and some other things. But there was it could be very tense because you had to guard what you said. You also had to guard documents because it was pre-computer, right? Okay, so fast forward. When I go into Scientology to do some introductory courses, at this point, I just, okay, see what's going on. I had to do my personality test, my OCA, Oxford Capacity Analysis, and it doesn't have anything to do with Oxford University, Hubbard. Put that in there. And that's that big, whatever, 200 question test. It was really weird because that's the first thing they'll do. They'll they'll give you the personality test, and then they're trying to find your ruin and sell you and say whatever is wrong with you. So while they were grading it, they knew that I had security clearances. And John, did you know that if you're law enforcement have clearances, you're a journalist. They don't want you in Scientology. You're considered an illegal pre-clear.
Wow.
So if you had went in as a cop, they didn't allow in law enforcement. And they didn't allow in journalists or people with security clearances or connected to intelligence agencies. And I did this screening where I said I had security clearances. So then suddenly I was in this sec check and I didn't know, look, I'm green. I don't know what Scientology is, right?
Right.
All I know is this guy named L. Ron Hubbard wrote a book and called Dianetics. That's all I know. Okay. So suddenly I'm in with these guys in these Navy uniforms and I'm on the e-meter and they're asking me questions like, are you a communist? Are you a homosexual? Everything you know about you. And I'm thinking, man, this is weird. This is not a church. and then they asked, and I've told this story before. It was funny. They asked me, do you have any evil thoughts or purposes toward L. Ron Hubbard? I said, no, I don't know the guy, And do you have any evil thoughts or purposes on Mary Sue Hubbard? And I said, who's Mary Sue Hubbard? The wife of the Commodore. And I said, who's the Commodore? It's L. Ron Hubbard. I go, how's he a Commodore? Because he's in charge of a flotilla of ships in the Sea Org. And I said, what's the Sea Org? It's like Who's on First almost. It's a comedy, except it's a black comedy. And they were very suspicious of me. And then my OCA comes back and I go to see a Reg named Rafi. And he's this swarthy Israeli guy. You know those guys whose body hair goes up to their neck and then their beard starts and then goes up to there, and he's smoking. And he said, we have the results, your Oxford Capacity Analysis, your personality test. And he said, time is not your friend when you're in the reactive mind. That's his voodoo kill shot. Well, long story short, they wanted $12,000 from me just to get life repair. And, I had a college degree, I had a responsible job at a condo. And back then, if you adjust for inflation, that's like $40,000.
Wow.
It's like, and I told Rafi, it's a fun story. I said, Rafi, you might be $12,000 fucked up, but I am not $12,000 fucked up. I'm sorry. It's like, I wasn't, John, it's like, you got to be really fucked up to spend $40,000, right? I said, I might be $500 fucked up because I knew by then I'd been there like 6 hours at this point. I knew by then if I didn't give them some money to escape back to my home planet, I wasn't getting out there because I was locked in this little room and he's chain smoking. So I've spent maybe $100 on some books and a course just to get the hell out. So I did a few courses, but they never really trusted me because my clearances. And it wasn't until years later when I was talking to Marty Rathbun where he said, well, Jeff, of course, they weren't going to trust you, but they wanted some other things that I had to offer them, like
Right.
state-of-the-art knowledge on fiber optics and other things. And that's a story for another show, what they really wanted. But what I did know is that they were running an intelligence operation that was sophisticated. I knew that from the sec check I had on an e-meter, which is a lie detector, because it resembled so much the one I had with the DOD and the FBI. So that's how I knew this was not a church. It was an intelligence. It was a very sophisticated intelligence gathering operation. And that's what kind of set up my red flags initially.
Wow.
So
That's
I did some courses, then I faded out, but because they never let you off their mailing list, and I had some friends when I would attend events periodically and buy some books, because I was kind of freaked out, like maybe I just better throw a little bit of money at these guys, you know?
mhm.
I didn't know what to make of it.
It's you know, the interesting thing is how so many people, everyone asks, how did you get involved in a cult? And they don't realize that you start off in the simplest of terms. You're just, a lot of people are looking for explanations. They're looking for guidance. They're looking for, there's something that they're looking for to help make things more whole in their life. And whether that be just to increase your educational level on what's going on. And, you know, so a lot of people innocently come into this and they don't realize what they're getting into. And before you know it, you're so deep into it, it's hard to get yourself out of it at that point. You're so locked in. And we as humans, we have a tendency that when we commit to something, we don't like to just walk away from it. And a lot of folks don't understand. You can be one of the most intelligent people in the world and still become a victim of a cult, because that's how they work. Their job is to manipulate you emotionally and mentally and get you so dependent upon them that you don't want to leave or are afraid to.
Sure.
And, it's a lot of people, it gets me when I hear a lot of people, how could you be part of that? How could you let them suck you in? To you actually working with something like that, you just don't know the levels of intensity that they put on you and how it works.
Yeah.
And, it's an amazing thing to me that, on both sides, how you can manipulate someone so easily. But then again, on the other hand, how someone can not understand what is going on that has brought you to that point in the first place. So,
Sure.
it's, so how long were you with Scientology?
Not very long. I mean, actively, maybe 6 months. And then, like I said, because they were uneasy with me, they wanted me to do certain things as a technical consultant that I was uncomfortable with. Like when they were asking me, because I had worked around state-of-the-art military technology and some fiber optics, they were asking me a lot of questions.
Oh,
And they
yeah.
almost wanted me to do some consulting because I knew that they wanted, and this is maybe I'll do the full disclosure show sometime, but I knew that they wanted a fiber optic system so that they couldn't be wiretapped. And I knew they'd been raided in 75 by the FBI because I did some research. I'm sorry, in 77 by the FBI. I knew they'd been raided. And I was doing, fast forward a little bit, I left Hughes and I went into a sales engineering job with interconnection technology. And I was working with a lot of state-of-the-art fiber optics. And so I was also working with line of sight microwave dishes then. And so I was helping things like Pac Bell convert from copper to fiber optics.
Wow.
And so I had expertise as a sales engineer. And I was in a meeting one time and they were talking how they wanted a fiber optic system. And I knew that was, they didn't want to be wiretapped. That's why a lot of companies went to it. Also, the smaller companies that didn't really need fiber optics went to it to protect their data. These were technology companies, Silicon Valley, LA, defense contractors, and they were going to line of sight microwave. So I could see that they were wanting to clamp down their security. And I remember asking my OT7 friend who'd brought me into the church, Gunter, about the 77 FBI raid. And he said it was because Scientologists stole government copier paper. And I knew that was bullshit. I worked with plenty of government copier paper at Hughes.
Yeah.
And it's not the paper that's going to get you arrested.
It's what's
It's
on
what,
that paper.
well, it's also the breaking and entering to get
Yeah.
the government so the government copier paper is nothing. It's the breaking and entering.
I believe that also impersonating government officials was another one that was in part of that. So
yeah, and it's the information on the paper that belongs to the government and not you. So, you know, it's sort of like, look, John, I've got two uncles that were police officers. I have family members who were in intelligence, and so I've been around military police, you know, through family and friends, you know, and you know, it's always when someone lies to you. And this guy Gunner didn't need to lie to me. This whole thing really, an early crack in the dam was that SEC check where I saw security apparatus, and then the lie they were telling Scientologists the FBI raided for stealing government copier paper. That was like 112 FBI officers, 3 locations, mostly in LA. You're not going to deploy that much horsepower,
right.
armed agents for stealing government copier paper. Like, oh, come on. That's not even a good lie.
Yeah.
John, look at resource allocation with the FBI. Are you going to, if you're in charge, you're not going to put 112 agents for the case of stolen government copier paper. Like that would be 1 or 2 agents, right?
Unless you stole like 3,000 rolls.
I mean, that's ridiculous. It doesn't add up on asset, you know, manpower. Or you just don't put that many agents on a raid.
But I think that goes back to, you know, as I was talking about earlier, the total dependence upon Scientology for your information and for your guidance and everything. And we've seen it with so many other things with Scientology where everyone just believes it. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. To them, it is a truth because that's what they've been told.
Sure.
And so it's really easy to sit there and lie to you. And you look at, you know, they're thinking you're on the same page as someone who is, you know, $12,000 into Scientology, and you're just going to accept everything that they give you as the truth and God's word on it. So I'm not surprised they would lie to you like that, though. That's
no. And fast forward, just another lie. Steve Brackett was a Scientology OT8, and he was engaged to Nancy Cartwright, TV's voice of Bart Simpson, who's a Scientologist. Yep. Now, Steve got into heavy financial trouble. He was obviously depressed. He drove up to the bridge there in Big Sur, California, that beautiful bridge.
Okay.
And he parked his car and he jumped off the bridge and killed himself. That's very metaphoric, jumping off a bridge and killing yourself.
Yeah.
Jumping off the bridge.
And so, like you said, jumping off the bridge in both ways. So,
yeah. But what the church told parishioners is that Steve Brackett had been killed in a head-on automobile accident. They flat out lied because you can't have an OT8 killing himself or herself. You can't have it. It's out PR.
You know, that reminds me of the stories of the folks who are in those upper OT levels, and one of them is diagnosed with either a terminal or a serious illness, and they're sent down to South America. And they go into the waiting room, and there's a bunch of other upper level OTs that are in that same waiting room, yet no one back home knows what's going on.
Yeah, they don't. No, it's all about PR, keeping looks up and not really letting. Well, we saw that in the Danny Masterson rape trial, how much they, SA trial, how much they covered up, how much Scientology worked to cover that up. It's a Jane Doe's.
That single case alone there is it's years of material that are coming out of that one. There's so much manipulation and what seems to be corruption that happened on that, and then the actions of the actual detectives themselves and how that they handled it and the things that are going on. I'm still waiting for the transcript. I believe it was Detective Reyes was the one who interviewed at least one of the Jane Does. And my understanding is that the transcript on that is just amazing how horribly the Jane Doe was treated as someone who is a prospective victim of SA, and how that whole thing went down, and how that, you know, if you're a detective and you're investigating a situation like that, your job is to make that person feel secure and safe with you and let them know that you believe what they're saying. And, you're not there to break them down and interrogate them as though they are a person of interest, or as it used to be called, a suspect in the case. So there's a
Exactly.
lot came to light with that. And it was almost terrifying.
Yeah, I want to read it all too because I was there at the trial, both trials, and certain conduct, and we'll get into that
Mhm.
Scientology's relationship to LAPD,
Oh
or at
yeah.
least the Hollywood station. Yeah, but I did watch it, and I like you, I want to read the transcripts.
Yeah. That's, that there's a lot of transcripts. I'm still waiting on the one for Whitney and down in Florida with what happened with her. I want to see. There's a lot I want to see from that, and I'm just waiting to get the paperwork in for it because there's someone who clearly had some kind of psychiatric or mental a problem going on, being diagnosed as, I believe it was Lyme disease or lupus they were diagnosed with, and being fed a bunch of vitamins and things like that. If that's true, my goodness, why is that person still hold their medical degree and their license?
Yeah, why isn't there a charge for maybe negligent homicide, malpractice, etc.?
Yeah. Goldie, if you want to go ahead and drop that one, that's fine. Let's see here, folks. We got a lot we're going to be covering tonight, so I'll jump in and out with questions when we can. But we've got some pretty interesting things going on here, and we want to get through them as best as we can. So talking about Scientology and its history with private investigators, we have to go back to the beginning, and we have to start talking about things like the Guardian's Office and LRH's policies and what brought private investigators into the view of Scientology. And
Well,
I think you're the perfect person for that.
okay, well, I'm glad to help. Well, basically, Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard goes back a long way. When he started the movement, it was treated with skepticism and suspicion, and then Hubbard had a lot of bad publicity in the media. He had a lot of bad publicity, and so he started writing letters to the FBI to accuse, uh, for example, many people in his organization of being communists or being sent in. And so he started trying to use the FBI to investigate people in his organization who were working against him or who had left the organization.
Yeah.
And Hubbard was paranoid to begin with, and he had delusions of grandeur, and he would make up stories. So
You know that.
So he was always sending his people out to investigate other people, to spy. He made up this cockamamie story about how he was sleeping in his apartment here in Los Angeles, and somebody broke into the apartment and took out a big hypodermic syringe. First, they shocked him with 120-volt current from, I guess they cut a table lamp or something cord. They electrocuted him with 120-volt current, and then they shoved a psychodermic needle into big psychodermic needles into his chest and injected it with air to try to introduce an embolism to kill him.
Wow.
Now that's like in that scene in Pulp Fiction, when John Travolta is with Uma Thurman's character, she ODs, and they jab that big needle into her,
Yep.
right to
The adrenaline needle.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
now, if you had that jabbed into your, between your ribs to try to introduce an embolism, that would have worked. So, but there was no police report. So Hubbard slowly begins in 1964. He starts using his own people to investigate, but they're not that good. He's practicing it. So he formalizes fair game as a practice. He also writes a policy letter in 1964 in which he says, start hiring outside professionals, because he realizes that private investigators can do a much better job. He also realizes the police don't want to deal with his religious matters because he's a church by that point. He got tax exemption in 1957. So the police don't want to get involved. Look, Chief, you're running, you're the watch commander, and you get a call saying we're having some problem at a church that's a religious matter. You're not going to send your officers out. So Hubbard decides to have his own private police force, and those are called private investigators and he can hire them. So he writes a policy letter, and you can read it, and I'll post it in the show notes. It's on my blog. Hire outside professionals, meaning private investigators. So he decided the best way to get even, because he was paranoid and driven by revenge, was to collect dirt on people, especially on newspaper reporters, IRS agents, anyone involved in the government. So, of course, PIs can go out and get dirt on people if people have dirt to get. And so he wanted to just get things that he could use for character assassination or blackmail or anything else. People in his church, members of Scientologists, of course, he would do sect checks, and he would ask them long list of questions, like the Joburg sect check, which originated in Johannesburg when he was there. That has a lot of questions about your sexual life, your sexual practices. Have you stolen things? Have you committed crimes? So there's an internal intelligence apparatus that is based on knowledge reports and sect checks. And that's why a lot of people don't speak out against the church, because the church has blackmail on them, or character assassination, or their embarrassing secrets. Mm-hmm. And then there's the external one against the journalists, and that's made up of Hubbard's mercenaries, private investigators. And these are bad private investigators. They're taking cult blood money.
Well, we also have to remember that back in that time, I mean, what was it, 1964? You said that when he wanted to start bringing in the PIs, there was a lot less regulation on private investigators back then. You could literally hire your own private police force. And that was very prevalent, like with the coal mining companies. They had their own private agencies that had badges that said special police on them.
Yeah, and that goes into the 19th century, where the railroads were using, like Pinkerton. Mm-hmm. So the history of private police forces in America goes back to a long way. Militias, private militias, paramilitary groups. So basically, I would like to think of the PI Scientology uses not as private investigators, but as a mercenary force,
right? As
a for-hire paramilitary group, because a lot of them are retired police officers, FBI, Secret Service, and they carry guns. So I think a better reconceptualization that we as critics, former members, journalists should speak of Scientology mercenaries, many of whom are armed, and many of whom, if they were investigated, have some dirt on them.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of disgraced police officers who become PIs.
Well, one of the most famous Scientology PIs, notorious, I should say, is Eugene Ingram, who was a sergeant with LAPD. And he was let go. And you can Google it, and that might be a different show. But Eugene Ingram was a dirty cop who became Scientology's one of their dirtiest PIs. And here's Scientology's concept. You couple two things. You get bad PIs who are lawless and willing to break the law for money, and then you get Scientology. L. Ron Hubbard's view is that Scientology is above WOG law. WOG is a derogatory term. It's Scientology's word for us who are non-Scientologists. And so Hubbard decided he was going to go to war, fair game, using his paid mercenary army called PIs that were run through the Guardian's office, because initially the Guardian's office managed it. So he set up the Guardian's office. Mary Sue was in charge of that. And it was a worldwide intelligence gathering organization whose goal was to destroy all opposition against Scientology. So, get reporters to kill stories, get media not to cover stories, silence ex-members. And that was
By the way, when you see me keep looking down, I'm taking notes. There's just so much good information coming from this. I want to make sure I keep putting it all down. So,
so basically that's the origins of it, the paranoia. Hubbard believed that if he could, he wrote a policy called he had to make Scientology look as good as possible. I'll just put it this way. Scientology is driven by wanting to have good public relations. They want to look good in front of the public. So that means they have to destroy any opposition that doesn't make them look good. And that's kind of a dictatorship. That's really the calculus. We see Mr. Putin in Russia, what he does to journalists who get on the wrong side, or the cartels in Mexico.
Yeah, exactly.
And
I
so
think
it's always been the case that whistleblowers, journalists, investigators, former members can speak the truth.
right.
And depending on, hey, look, L. Ron Hubbard actually calls for a genocide in his book, Science of Survival. He said there was once a dictator in South America who noticed that all the lepers were beggars in his country. And so by the simple expedient of taking all the beggars out and drowning them in the river, there was an end to leprosy. So he
Wow.
said that all antisocial people 2.0 or below on the tone scale, if they were done away with, if they were disposed of quietly and without sorrow, Scientology could run the world.
And then
So there's actually a call for a Scientology genocide. I have it posted
wow.
on my blog.
It's basically like the degraded people then.
Yeah, antisocial personalities, anyone 2.0 or below.
That's just, my goodness. It's, the more I learn and the more I see about it, and the complete lack of regard for anyone that isn't within COS or considered someone who would be a potential gain for COS by getting them on, is the lack of regard for them as human beings is just utterly astounding to me.
Well, that's a good point. Let me jump in. Scientology is a master race cult. Hubbard wrote a letter in which he said that Homo novus, the new man, is a skyscraper taller than Homo sapiens. So we're called Homo saps, Homo sapiens.
Wow.
So he actually believes that they're a master race group called Homo novus, or the new man. And the clears are so powerful. Hubbard in his Magnificence actually said that Jesus and Buddha were just a little bit higher than clears. So when you look at the psychopolitics that begins in the 50s, there's a master race ideology set down. There's a call for a genocide. And although they don't have the means to do it, you can damn well bet that if Scientology had the means to do it, they would be out killing people. I don't have any doubt about that.
I mean, if they reminds me of the yoga group, I forget what it is, where they built the huge complex or whatever you want to call it, where they were living at. And they actually started arming themselves and were trying to declare themselves their own country within the United States. And I forget what his name is right now.
I think that was the Rajneeshis in Oregon.
Yep, that was it.
Yeah, they launched one of the biggest bioterror attacks in the U.S. when they poisoned salad bars
with the salmonella.
Yeah, to rig an election. They were hoping to get enough people sick with a bioterror attack. So, so these groups, are militant, paramilitary, and they're often vicious, violent. And Hubbard had that, but he had it more organized. The fact that he was so big on organization, he could actually put together something like the Guardian's Office that was a transnational, and it was linked together by telex back then. So they've always been good on the use of technology, data compilation, things like that. So they're the only religion in the world with that kind of intelligence gathering capabilities.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's and it's easy to build up a group when you get everyone so dependent on the organization, and then you start using terms like degraded, wogs, those kinds of things, where you turn them from being actual human beings into being somewhat of just a lesser being on the earth than you are. So it makes it easier that when you want to try to push those kinds of sentiments that they should be disposed of, it's very easy to do it because they're not people. They're just degraded, and all they're doing is bringing society down, and they're going to stop you from the ultimate goal of clearing the planet.
Absolutely. Yeah, the dehumanization. And that even goes on with the church. When you're declared a suppressive, you go one day from being a member in good standing to a suppressive. It can happen overnight at any time for any reason, according to the whims of Scientology. So
go ahead.
I'm just saying so that's kind of the background. And then when, of course, when the church was raided July 1977 by the FBI, the Guardian's office was dismantled, but it was simply replaced with Scientology's Office of Special Affairs. So that's all the policies Hubbard wrote are still very much in effect. And so fair game is still very much active. The church denies it exists, but that's
Right.
the evidence. There's enough evidence online. Stan League, Hate Monitor, what they do online, their actual things they do to prove that. And that's one reason Leah Remini's suing, and she's who we want to talk about.
Yeah, that's and it's amazing. I want to pull up one of the quotes that you'd given me, and this is a direct quote from Lafayette himself. We are slowly and carefully teaching the unholy a lesson. It is as follows: we are not a law enforcement agency, but we will become interested in the crimes of people who seek to stop us. If you oppose Scientology, we promptly look up and will find and expose your crimes. If you leave us alone, we will leave you alone. It's very simple. Even a fool can grasp that. And don't underrate our ability to carry it out. L. Ron Hubbard, HCOB, 5th of November, 1967, Critics of Scientology. I find that just a stunning statement. It goes along with a lot that we hear about how people are being treated and what's going on in their lives. And we know that part of the teachings of LRH is that if you oppose Scientology, the goal is to do anything that it takes to destroy you, to shut you up. And that's been proven time and time again. And that's part of, I believe that's part of the fair gaming tactics where he puts that into use. And
yeah, and I'm surprised that the Department of Homeland Security doesn't look at that quote and look at it as correctly understand Scientology as a paramilitary organization, because the Sea Org is a paramilitary organization. They wear uniforms, they have ranks, there's a hierarchy. And
that's the thing is that, we talk about law enforcement, firefighters, even EMTs as being paramilitary, and it's all for the same reasons. We have a structured system that we work under. We wear a uniform that is, as the word goes, everyone has to be uniform in the way that they look. And, so that's where, you have a hierarchy where you have the bottom level and then ranking that goes up as you go through the agency itself. So to say that Sea Org is not a paramilitary organization, I would say it's contradictive of what a paramilitary organization is. Sea Org is definitely paramilitary.
Sure. And per Hubbard's diktat on what you just posted, if you can put it back up.
Yes, sir.
Now, this is something I want to discuss briefly. He says, if you leave us alone, we will leave you alone. Now, in my mind, that is an offer made by a terrorist. If you leave us alone, we will leave you alone. Meaning, if you leave us alone, we will not destroy you. Meaning, stay out of our way, don't bother us, and don't underrate our ability to carry out retaliation, revenge, destruction. Because really, the goal of fair game is to drive someone to bankruptcy, insanity, or suicide.
Wow.
And he says, we are slowly and carefully teaching the unholy a lesson. So first he dehumanizes those who oppose Scientology as being unholy, and he's going to teach them a lesson. He has no right to do this. It is as follows: we are not a law enforcement agency, but we will become interested in the crimes of people who seek to stop us. That means if we can possibly blackmail you, we're going to blackmail you, engage in character assassination. And if you oppose Scientology, we promptly look up and we will find and expose your crimes. So you can take it off, Sean.
And if you're not aware, if you're watching and you're not familiar with it, when they're talking about crimes, they're talking about what they consider crimes against Scientology, or things that would make you just an outcast within your community, things that are so embarrassing that they can use against you. All of those fall into the category of the crimes. That's why when you see like the old videos where, you would have a group of them would mob on someone and start screaming at them, and you'd hear things where they're claiming that they are someone who is a minor attracted person. And the way to avoid calling them that personally is say, are you still interested in having with minors? And they would do that very loud and do it in a very public place where everyone can see and hear it. And that's part of what they call crimes, is what they believe to be offenses against the church itself.
Yeah,
And,
that's why he said we will find an exposure of crime. Now in his fair game policy, also Ron Hubbard also said find or manufacture evidence. So if you live a good life, you don't have anything on you, they'll just manufacture, they'll make up stuff.
Yeah.
They'll make up complete and outright lies and publish them. And they do it in such a way because they work through lawyers.
Well, look at when you hear people who have blown, and they're talking about when they would go into these sessions, the auditing sessions, and literally be locked in a room until they admit something, even if they hadn't done it. But they would have to give them something that they could actually use as a reason for their auditing session, or what's wrong with them, or their what do they call it, ethics, or however they want to classify it. And that's, so it's not surprising at all that they're going to do this against someone who's not in the organization itself.
No. And once you leave, you become a very, very big target. Look, John, we move to the text.
You ready for that?
Let's get right into the Leah.
Well, Leah Remini. You want to give a little lead up into how you got the text message?
Sure. There's an underlying case in New York out of Long Island. Suzanne Goldsmith. She was being followed by PIs in a matrimonial case. Her husband had hired a PI firm, and this PI firm was owned by Dan Ribicoff, who used to be the polygraph expert on the Steve Wilkos show. Until he wasn't. That's a part of a story we'll get into. And so they reconciled. David and Suzanne reconciled. And then it was discovered that Ribicoff's firm had massively overbilled David Smith. And he sued. And they wanted to get text messages to document the overbilling in which the Ribicoff firm was engaged in. And in these text messages, this text about Leah came out. And that's when I reached out to Suzanne Goldsmith, because it was one of those moments where I read it in a newspaper article, and I reached out to Suzanne, but this was shocking to me. So, So if you put up the text, I can give you the background of the surveillance situation in which this emerged.
So folks, if you're ready, here is the text we were talking about, and this is the basis for tonight's live stream. And when I saw it, I was just like, what? So
and before you, okay, there it is. Now, the players here, Yanti Mike Green, also known as Michael Moretti Ford Cruz, or Michael Cruz. He's the PI who works for Dan Ribicoff. IIGPI is the firm. And what happened is Leah was with Jennifer Lopez, her best friend, in New York filming. Now, the Ribicoff firm had purchased the call sheets for the film set to know when Leah would be arriving. Wow. Scientology had hired Ribicoff to investigate Leah because her show, Scientology in the Aftermath, was just getting huge audience. So Yanni Mike Green, who's a retired New York City police detective, is the PI. He's in texting other PIs, and they're watching Leah pull up. It's early in the morning, and there's surveillance photographs. And so Yanni Green, he texts one of the other PIs, it's actress Leah Remini. And then he says, word is they want to kill her. And that was one of those, oh my God, what is going on here? Is there a plot where they, meaning Scientology, want to kill her, meaning Leah Remini? And this text message is pretty damning, and it has been included in Leah's lawsuit. So that's some questions for you as a police officer, as a detective.
Certainly. I'm going to go ahead and pull that down.
Yeah. Okay, so we have the text. Mm-hmm. Now, you're a detective and you get the text. what questions come up in your mind? This is a retired cop, and he's a dirty cop. I'll just put it that way.
Right.
What
There's going to be a
questions?
lot. First one's going to be is, where did you get this information from in the first place? And I'm going to follow it with, how credible is this information? And do we have any more information as how they plan to carry this out?
Yeah. And if you know of a murder plot to kill Leah Remini, why didn't you come to the police? Are you an accomplice? Do you want to become an accessory after the fact? So,
and to clarify it to everyone, Leah already knows about this. This is part of her ongoing case, which is a reason why we couldn't get her in on it. She can't speak on such things like this. So we're putting this out here, but she has a case and she can't speak publicly about it. So
yeah, and I'm not going to offer. I'm not saying anything other than the text is there, and it's a matter for the civil trial. But the text is there. We have one of Ribicoff's PIs saying he heard there was a plot to kill Leah Remini. And this is a PI working for the Church of Scientology, ultimately through cutouts, through law firms. Yeah. And so that was shocking to me, because earlier my wife, Karen de la Carriere, she told a story in a recent podcast with the Degraded Daughters of Dianetics.
You there, Jeff?
Okay. Can you
You
hear
were
me?
breaking up for a second.
Okay. Am I back on?
Yeah.
Okay. So Karen, there was a setup. There was a critic of the church going to Thailand, and this was back in the 80s, I believe. And I don't recall his name, but he was a critic of the church going to Thailand, and Scientology wanted a PI to plant drugs in his luggage, because in Thailand, drugs are the death penalty.
Oh yeah,
automatic death penalty for smuggling drugs into Thailand.
Yeah, if you look back through my content, you see I've been to Thailand dozens of times, and I can tell you personally, back when I first started going, I was being prescribed Norco for I'd torn my MCL on my left knee. And that was one of the things. It was a no-go, because that would end up putting me in prison or getting me put to death if I entered Thailand carrying those. So I can personally attest, they do not play with that when it comes to narcotics. So
no, they don't. And so these PIs who have a knowledge of the laws, they have tried to frame people. For example, former Clearwater Mayor, the late Gabe Cazares, was framed in a hit-and-run auto accident. And we only learned about this because of a couple things, the raid, but we also found that Gabe Cazares' lawyer was actually a Scientologist. And he became Gabe Cazares' lawyer. That was Merrill Veneer. He was disbarred as a result. So while he was pretending to be Gabe Cazares' lawyer, he was feeding all of that information to the church. So, wow. Yeah, no kidding. And then in another case up in Oregon, look, Marty Rathbun, he's flipped. He's left the church. But right. His third book, Memoirs of a Scientology Warrior, I think is his best book. And I think that's very valuable to read. He recounts a lot of the things they did and how they did it.
What was the title of that again?
The title is called Memoirs of a Scientology Warrior by Mark Rathbun. And Marty wrote that when he was still on our side. I think that is an outstanding book on just some history of how he, as Inspector General RTC, was running OSA, and how strategies and how they did it. And so that's interesting background for people who really want to get into this. So here, Leah was a high value target. She had PIs on her 24/7. And I get calls a lot of times, John, as I'm sure you do. I've just come out, I start speaking out against the church, and I think church PIs are following me. What do I do? Mm-hmm. So how do you answer that?
Well, if you think you have private investigators following you, there's a lot of things you need to look into. You want to look for things that are out of place, and you're going to find, like, your mailbox, the door to it is open when it should have been shut all the way. That's a very simple one. You're expecting important mail to come in, and for some reason it never gets to you, or you're finding mail that's open. And the next thing is in your travels, suddenly you're seeing vehicles and people that are showing up in multiple places where you are at, and they shouldn't be. Perfect example, I leave from my house, I see a vehicle parked 2 doors down from me. I see who the driver is. A day or two later, I see that vehicle 50 miles south of here in Toledo, Ohio, where working with my wife's courier's business, I see that vehicle down there with the same driver in it. And then later that day, it's 2 doors down from my house. And, certain things that you're also going to find, watch when you're driving. You'll notice a vehicle that's constantly, it's within sight, but it's not close enough that you can really see the driver or see what's going on with it. And, there's a lot of different things that go into it. Like with me, I jacked my vehicle up, put it on jack stands, got up underneath my vehicle to take a look at something. And I noticed this little teardropped white thing that was up underneath my car, and not knowing what it is, pulling it off, and it has the Apple symbol on it. Ask one of my children who are more tech savvy than I am. And they're like, well, that's one of those Apple tracking things, so you don't lose your phone or you don't lose your bag or something like that. And so then I went around the rest of my vehicle and I found 3 of them total that had been placed underneath my car. So it's things like that. Little things are out of place. You get in your car and you find that your glove box is open for some reason. You're finding that paperwork that was in your vehicle suddenly isn't there anymore. It's all little subtle things that keep happening that build up into it. And you have to make sure that you're not getting yourself overworked up, because a lot of people can get somewhat paranoid because there's so many vehicles on the road that suddenly you're seeing the same car everywhere you turn around. Sure. You just have to be very cognizant of it. In my case, as you and I were talking about it earlier, as a former police officer, one of the things that I do is I look at people's faces. I memorize, so I know if I've seen that person before. It is just a force of habit, over 30 years of being a law enforcement officer. I look at license plates. And then when I look at a vehicle, I'm looking for little things that, like, there's a dent right above the headlight, something like that. Those are things I'm going to look out for. And if I see that same vehicle in multiple places where I'm going, I drive almost 200 miles a day when I'm helping my wife with her courier business. There is no reason that someone is going to show up from Southeast Michigan, where I live at, 2 doors down from my house, and then show up 45 minutes south of there in all the same different areas that I'm going to. Things just don't add up with that. In my case, at first I thought, yeah, coincidental and all that, until a neighbor of mine called me and said, hey, do you know that there's a guy in a gray Honda Civic that's parked out in front of my house taking pictures of your house? So, things all added up at once. And I was, we had a nice little talk with that person, and there's been no more repeat visits from him. But those are the things that you have to watch out for. And you have to be aware of in law enforcement and military, we call it situational awareness, SA. You want to make sure that you're covering your 6, which means you're keeping an eye out, but you also have to keep a positive mindset. You don't want to let yourself get drugged down into this hole where you're constantly seeing things that aren't there. And that does happen. And you have to find out, am I really that level of a threat that they would actually put someone out to watch on me?
Sure.
So, I think that you have a really good idea for a way that we can look into these things also.
Yeah, before I get to that, let me, my take on it, because I do get calls. First of all, you should maintain situational awareness in general. But the one point I want to make, the takeaway today, is that private investigators are not police officers. They don't have any police authority. In fact, they have no authority. They're civilians. They're just civilians, but they're trained in investigation. And so they can't hurt you. They don't have police authorities. If they ask you questions, you don't have to talk to them. I always advise people to take pictures of them, take pictures of their license plate, take pictures, and document the time. Because if this becomes a pattern over a week, you want to document time, where you were at, why you think you're being followed. And also, but don't be scared, because these guys they want to intimidate you. They want to gaslight you. So
Exactly.
if the things you mentioned, things that are out of place, if you think you're being gaslighted, just don't react to it. You don't react to it. You can install security cameras around your house, and with more Ring doorbells. You can also talk to your neighbors. Go. Your neighbors, virtually everywhere has a neighborhood watch, whether it's homes or apartments.
Yep.
Tell your friends, your neighbors, hey, look, these Scientology PIs are looking for me because I'm speaking out. And normally people are really glad to help. They're very,
Here's
very
here's
glad to help you. Yeah.
here's a really good question that relates to that, and this is from Paul T. Is it legal for a private investigator to interfere with your mail? I know the answer, but a lot of people don't. So
Go ahead,
go
please.
ahead. Yeah, it's actually a federal crime
Yeah.
to interfere with someone's mail.
Sure.
Most times your postmaster general is not going to go after them. It'll fall back to your local police department, but it could still be a felony charge that this person could be linked to and actually be found guilty of and get themselves in trouble for. So no, PIs cannot touch your mail.
No, PIs cannot. Also, they cannot photograph into inhabited dwellings. The laws vary from state to state. Let me just say that. They can't steal your mail. That's a federal crime, and they can harass you, or you can experience it. Let me put it this way: Scientology wants them to harass you, because what OSA's ultimate product is a dismissed attacker. They want you to stop posting.
Yeah, it's to make you look as though you're not a substantial witness to anything that's going on with them or a substantial threat to them.
Yeah, or they want to shutter you into silence. Now, it's illegal to put a GPS on someone's car in California, except in the case like a married couple, the car is in
it's a duly owned.
Both of your names, then you can do that. Now, I have a device. One thing you can buy on Amazon, they're inexpensive now, but this is the professional grade. This is a device that sweeps for bugs. It's very expensive, and I use it professionally. I can sweep offices, homes, cars. And so you can buy a device to sweep your car. Normally, you want to put on some latex.
Oh, you're breaking up there again, Jeff. And while he's doing that, there were a couple of questions that came in that I wanted to go over. Nasty Nathaniel, what if you don't have the money to install ring cams or other security systems around your house? Not everyone is rich. The thing is, Nathaniel, and by the way, if you don't know who Nasty Nathaniel is, he's an A1 auditor. He's a good friend of the channel. Love the guy. Everybody in the world is putting those out there. So more than likely in your neighborhood, there's going to be more than one ring camera that's out there. And when you start looking into the multiple placings of them, they're going to catch a snapshot that comes together with a 360-degree view on it. So just because you can't afford one, there are other people that they will find a way, because everybody loves this new technology, and you'll find that those ring cameras are out there. And there's a lot of ways to take care of it, but that's one. Someone else was talking about not knowing that the trackers were on my car, or how would you know in the first place? I didn't know. I went up underneath my vehicle after I jacked it up, and that's when I found the first one. So, how long had that been there? How long had I been being watched?
Yeah, you were, Chief, you said you were changing the brake pads on your cars, right?
I was doing, it was something with my brake lines. I was working on the brakes themselves when I saw it.
Yeah. So it doesn't hurt. Normally the trackers will be behind the license plate. You have a plastic bumper, and under there is a metal frame, and that's the easiest place for someone to surreptitiously put it. For Nasty Nathaniel, you just keep an eye on your place, keep an eye on you and your safety. And when you go out, always let people know, your trusted friend, that you're going out to do an AI audit or something. I'm sorry, an A1 audit. So
Yep.
just keep your neighbors informed. Not everyone can afford, like you said, Ring doorbell. Not everyone has electric. Some of the places, Nasty Nathaniel, out here in LA, some places are so old they don't have wiring out. They don't have doorbells. The electrical wiring doesn't work. So you just have to keep your neighbors informed. Several years ago, Karen and I had a PA named John Hernandez going through our neighborhood, and he was doing door knocks and just creating problems for us. And so I just followed up. Karen and I visited our neighbors and let them know what was going on. This was harassment by the Church of Scientology. The church hired inspectors. They reported our house for unsanitary conditions because we do bird rescue. Look,
Oh
the
my
birds
goodness.
are very well taken care of. They're clean. They harassed us with city agencies. We got a letter from the city attorney instructing all agencies that we were subjects of harassment.
Mm-hmm.
So you just have to go to the police or city agency, get your neighbors involved in watching, because normally your neighbors are such good assets.
Exactly.
And then also, if you're being gaslighted, don't fall prey to it. Just recognize it's PI screwing around with you. And you know what's weird is there's a phenomena where if someone knows you're a PI, they can be weird. Like when I go out and I do a door knock and I'm checking, say, a white collar financial crime,
Mm-hmm.
people get scared by PIs, and you don't have to be. I'm investigating, and I have a right to do. Let's say if $2 million is stolen on a crypto scam, and I'm looking for it, I can investigate it, right?
Yep. You can
And
use whatever is publicly available to you legally.
Yes, and I can photograph. Any of you can photograph out in public where there's no expectation of privacy. So a lot of times your cell phone is your best friend. If you're out and around and you just put up your cell phone and film the person and post it online, post it on YouTube.
Yep.
Karen and I have done that several times. We had a lady from OSA come out, supposedly bringing a bird because Karen loves birds and she's been into bird rescue for a long time. And the lady started talking to me. Karen was busy, and the lady started talking about how things are so much better at the church. And we filmed that and we posted it online, and we've had other PIs come out.
Well, that's a perfect segue into this question from Alonzo's blog. Can a PI use results of their investigation to publish on social media? And that's
Alan's question there is disingenuous as he is himself. There's a difference, Alan, between a blogger and a PI. So what you're trying to do here tells me you are working for OSA, and no one's going to convince me otherwise. I'm a blogger at the Scientology Money Project. I published publicly available documents from the Securities Exchange Commission, from the FBI, from the Department of Justice, from court documents. So you're trying to conflate the things, and I know what the hell you're trying to do, and that's why I think you're a scumbag, Alonzo.
Goldie, if you want to go ahead and take care of that, hon. Now here's one. This is why
he's an OSA guy, and he's trying to conflate something.
I've been watching the comments that have been rolling through from him. They're pretty interesting.
I'm not playing Alan's game. He's an old I know what he's trying to do. No, Alonzo, you're very dishonest. You've always been dishonest.
And I thought that, but I thought that was an interesting segue into that question, though. Emily wants to know, why are these things not considered harassment? I mean, I am sure it is a PI doing those things, but isn't it illegal? Go ahead.
Here's the thing. Going back to Alan's question, or Alonzo's, the Church of Scientology has plenty of photographs taken in public or data obtained from PI on its websites. So my question to Alan is, why does the Church of Scientology hire PIs? Well, some of the stuff it develops, there's photographs of me, of my wife, that were taken by PIs online in social media. So the Church of Scientology has answered your question, Alan. There's pictures of me, and if you're walking out on the sidewalk, people can take your picture and they can post it. And but what I'm doing, I've made a very distinct difference between blogging on the Scientology Money Project and exposing Scientology crime, lies, and legal matters. And my private investigation work is just that, it's private.
Mhm. And on the point of the harassment, what you have to do is you have to tell them, I do not want contact with you. Leave me alone. It's their job. They're legally licensed by whichever state they're working, and they're going to do their job. So when you notify them that they are to leave you alone, then it can start crossing into the world of harassment.
Yeah, and look, there's nothing wrong. They're civilians. You can walk up to a PI and say, I don't want you following me anymore, or I will file a complaint against your license with the state licensing board. So you have power if they're harassing you or you feel intimidated. There's cases of PIs getting TROs against them. So there's a line they have to respect. They can't intimidate or harass. You can report it.
Yep.
You can certainly report it. Now, if nothing else, the police may not do anything, but at least if you can get an incident report filed at the desk, it's on record. So these things happen. And as long as one thing we talked about, Chief, getting to earlier, I'm thinking of developing, and I need help to do it, a real-time reporting database. People
when
who
you told me
believe
about that, I'm all in. So
yeah, one project I'd like to launch, and this would be an open source project, and I'd like people to contact me if they want to help. It's basically reports of, I think I was followed by a Scientology PI, time, date, place, location. And we would put that up because I'd like to get some real-time tracking information on just how many PI Scientology uses and where they're located. And are you posting on social media? Did this happen when you started posting on YouTube or social media or Instagram? So I think if we could compile that, that would be really intriguing. Yes. And somebody who would be able to help, it would be like an adjunct to the Scientology Money Project, like a real-time Scientology PI database, because we have the power now to do it. And so reach out to me or John, and we could develop it. I think it'd be a hell of a good project.
And Goldie Mama, if you can put the emails out there for the folks that don't have them, they should know mine by now. But we'll get those email addresses out there so everyone, if you think that you are being interacted with someone who is a private investigator, we're going to set up a way that you can contact us, give us the information that is needed. We'll figure out some kind of question statement that they can fill out for everyone. Sure. And then we can use that information, put it into a database, and have actual real-time tracking of how this is happening. And I think that's just a fantastic way to handle it.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to add, John, there is what's called OIS. It's OSI, Open Source Intelligence. Mm-hmm. And I'm part of the open source intelligence community, and that's the use of public source documents. Correct. And we compile them into different projects. So my blog, the Scientology Money Project, is very much open source intelligence. People send me things, and I publish it. And the power of, like, Aaron Smith Levin's show is amazing. So Aaron can cover things in real time. I can cover long-term coverage of court cases. I've been on on Aaron's show many times. And so it's interesting if we pool our resources smartly into a networked, a network, and that's why we call it SPTV. It's an informal, unincorporated membership association, if you will.
Yeah. And
just we have no members.
This community is supposed to be about, is we're supposed to be about helping each other and helping others.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things is, this database, building this database will be a great way to build up information that's needed to help protect everyone in the long run.
Yeah. So, yeah. And I suspect the hot spots would be Los Angeles, Clearwater, Florida in general, Tampa. But, Ron Miscavige lived up in Wisconsin, and David Miscavige put 2 PIs, a father and son team, on him at what was it, $10,000 a week for 2 years. Pat Broker was followed for 25 years. I met the 2 PIs who followed them. They got
Yeah.
fired after 25 years. I got to meet them in that short window before they signed their deal.
Wow.
25 years.
And how much money went into that?
You know how much tax exempt?
Yeah, tax exempt money. That's great.
We were subsidizing those two PIs. I got a chance to talk to them, and one of them asked me if I was Jay Swift, and that's my name I'd been writing under at zenu.net. And it's and he said that when he was on duty, he was always reading my work, and he liked my comments at zenu.net. So it was kind of it was a nice acknowledgement from a Scientology PI, ex-PI, who got fired by David Miscavige after 25 years, to say, yeah, when I was on duty, I read your stuff. Look, they read everything, and I want to put one thing up. Let's get this. The other component is that Scientology publics are OSA volunteers, and I want to share that screen, John.
And here we go. Oh, it just popped out. I think you unshared it.
Oh, wait a minute. Let me share the screen.
Yep.
And it is, let me find it. Okay, there. Now.
There we go.
Okay, now, this was leaked by Marty Rathbun in 2006. And this is the OSA Western U.S. volunteer list. And this is an amazing leak. This shows how many public Scientologists are willing to spy as volunteers. And that means they'll get in communication with people. They'll share DMs with OSA, Gmails. They'll go to events. So this is just Western U.S., mostly L.A. You can see how many OTs and clears who are trusted by the church are happy to be spies. These are unlicensed PIs. Okay? You can make a case they're unlicensed. But these are all the little spies, snoops, who spread disaffection, lies, report up on you. Look at this. This is a 2006 effort. This is still going on. So always be aware of
17 years ago, and look at the depth of it.
Yeah, and this has comments on their trustworthy, what they would be good at doing. And so OSA, there's an intermediary, an intermediate strata between PIs and publics. So they will use OTs, trusted church, long-term church members, to report in on. And sometimes, like when we used to have SP parties, Karen and I, we always knew that there would be some church people would show up and report on it. We had SP parties at Tori Christman's house, and we always knew that they would show up.
And look what happened to Mark and Claire.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they'd go to their parties. So beware of friendly strangers offering to help. If someone new in your life seems very helpful or nosy.
And we're talking just a couple of months ago. So this shows you that this is still going on.
Yeah, and look how this goes page after page of. So yeah, the church very much uses all the resources it can. And it has Sea Org members working around the clock, compiling negative news reports. They literally record everything. Arnie Lerma one time gave me a great piece of advice I want to share. Let me get this off screen.
Okay, I'll pull it down.
Okay. Now, Arnie Lerma once gave me a great piece of advice, which I repeat to everyone listening. Never write or say anything that you're not willing to defend in a court of law.
Yeah.
So that's good when you're posting online about the church or writing anything, saying anything in social media, it could show up in a court of law one day. Now, the odds are very, very low because as Aaron has pointed out, the Church of Scientology has not sued in a long time because its Achilles heel is David Miscavige. You would just counterclaim and name him because he licenses the Church of Scientology International. He's the licensor, so he can be named. It's because it's a franchise system. If you sue the local U-Haul for something, you're going to sue the corporate U-Haul. That's the analogy. Church of Scientology International they in turn license all the orgs. But so be careful, stay within the bounds. If you suspect something, like Chief said, stay situationally aware, note the time, date, license plates, get a photograph if you can, because you can photograph PIs. They're photographing you, so you might as well photograph them back.
Photos, video, anything you can get on them. If you're, like you said, if your neighbors have the Ring camera, you can't afford to get the Ring camera. You know, a neighbor that has it, they more than likely they're going to pick it up on their camera. So
yeah, and to Nasty Nathaniel, one more thing I thought of. Nasty Nathaniel, you do your First Amendment audit so you have a camera. So at least if you have something happening in real time, keep your camera charged and handy if they're around your neighborhood and film them. Because you're a smart guy, you're very capable. I enjoy your work.
And then we all have a TV studio in our pockets.
Yeah.
Literally, there is content that I have on my channel that was filmed directly off of my cell phone and edited through editing software. But you have a television, you have more technology in your pocket with that phone than they had in TV stations in the 70s and 80s. Yeah. So you're going to have better resolution. You're going to have better quality of it. So you have that ability right there.
Sure.
So, you know, I want to say thank you to your wife, Karen Carriere. Saw that she was in the chat. And folks, if you don't know who she is absolute royalty within the community. She is a lady first and foremost. She is just a wonderful person. I love so much when I get to talk to her. She is a beautiful soul. And I'm so honored to have her here in the chat, and I hope to get her on the channel pretty soon here.
Oh, Chief, you should have Karen on. She is a wealth of stories. You know, she did work in OSA for several years, and the story she could tell you about David Miscavige, she's got a couple. Yeah. I won't spoil the surprise, but some of the stories that Miscavige said, you think you're dealing with a lunatic.
Well, I mean, the more I find out about this person, the more I'm wondering why they fight, you know, psychiatry so much. There's certainly a need there. So, One Love 51,000 wanted to know, how long have you been on the investigation side? And you're so knowledgeable, and they have enjoyed many of your interviews and Karen's on all channels.
Well, that's a good question. Well, I started when I left corporate in 2010. I was doing consulting on financial mergers and acquisitions, and then I started my blog because after Karen lost her son Alexander, nothing can bring him back, but we can fight the organization that took him, right?
Right.
So I started doing investigative journalism, open source intelligence. I started my blog, and one thing led to another, and
oh, you're breaking up again. All right, let's go. We'll go down through a few things here.
Okay.
If you don't, go ahead.
Oh, no. So one thing led to another, and it was just a natural evolution for me to get my PI license, you know, to put in the time to get it. Because, and I think it's funny, on the church's website, they complain about me being a PI. Now, the church goes through PIs like someone with bad breath goes through Tic Tacs. I mean, they're just, you know, someone with chronic halitosis. I mean, they go through so many PIs, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
We have one out here, they act, and I think, what hypocrisy. You guys spend what, $1 million, $2 million a month on PIs, whatever you spend,
tax free.
PIs. Yeah. And so, you know, you have a retired officer, Chief Poe, you got me, you got Graham Barry, you got a couple of people, you have the bloggers on SPTV, and you guys are complaining. Like, anyway, John, it's just ridiculous. You know, one thing we were talking about before the show, Scientology, you're supposed to be these mighty OTs with, you know, your godlike powers. And yet they act like such victims. They scream that they're victims, that they're victims, they're victims.
And you know, and that's one of the amazing things is how they play themselves off as though they are a marginalized community, and it's religious hate speech that's being used against them.
Yeah.
Okay. I was looking at a question there. It caught me off guard for a second. But you know, that's the amazing thing about it is here it is. You have these policies where you're going out and you're trying to do everything you can to destroy people. And then the moment people start saying, look what you did, you're a bigot. You hate me. It's hate speech to say the things, and that seems to be so prevalent in so many things nowadays in society, is the fact that it's so easy to play the victim nowadays.
Well,
And
that's why I have my blog. I can put out actual evidence. In the Danny Masterson case, there was so much actual evidence, and I'm covering a $1.8 billion Ponzi scheme, GPB Capital, run by David Gentili, and also Grant Cardone's twin brother, Gary Cardone. The SEC is after him, along with the state of Florida, for deceptive and dishonest trade practices. Grant Cardone has a class action suit, Pino versus Cardone, and Grant is filed a motion to be heard at the Supreme Court, which I think will fail.
it's not that easy.
No, and so I do real time reporting with evidence, and so I do it as a public service to show the public how dangerous this organization is. I put up one interesting thing about how they collect money. It's the David Sonnenberg hat pack, how to bring money fast in the organization. So by having a lot of people working together synergistically, we amplify our power. That's why someone recently, John, posted, where was it, on Mike Rinder's blog? I forget where it was at, but that someone in OSA posted that with all of our resources, we have 10,000 times the resources they do, and we can't bring down a handful of people.
Well, I think that, on so many levels, they're being called out. And one of the biggest problems they have is that the invention of the internet has certainly brought about so many truths about them that they have wanted to hide for so many years.
Yeah.
People now know they're not the victims they play. I think A Name has a perfect name for it: Cryantology.
Yeah, that's a good name. One time on Twitter, Jenna Elfman's husband, Bodie, posted something about all the persecution of Scientology, and that Scientologists were just like the Jews in Nazi Germany in the 1930s. So I replied to him with this picture from Flag Land Base in their ballroom, where they're having this opulent banquet, a 8-course dinner or whatever, with champagne and liqueurs and everything, all the fine linen and napery. And I said, Bodie, that's how Jews were treated in Nazi Germany in the 1930s. They had opulent banquets and wore tuxedos, and they were free to travel all around. Yeah, right, Bodie, I got it. And they've tried to run this, we're the Jews in Nazi Germany 1930. And that should really offend the Jewish community. But they're trying to appropriate that suffering of what they went through. And they said, we're just like that. No, you're not even close to it. You guys aren't being stopped from doing anything. I go to the Celebrity Center and they have galas. They're free to do whatever they want. No one, so this is why.
Well, how about in my case, I show up at Tokyo.org and I'm denied entry and asked to leave the building.
You were at the Tokyo.org?
I was in Malaysia and I was on my way back home. I had about a 25-hour layover in Tokyo. Yeah. And I said, you know what? This would be a perfect time to go over and get some footage from Tokyo.org. And I thought, you know what? Let's try to do a live stream from there. I'll see if I can hook up to their Wi-Fi and try to live stream in there. I walked in. I had a cloth mask on that my daughter had made. And I'm talking to a lady. She was wonderful, very, very pleasant person and all that. Out of this huge building, I saw 3 people in there. That was it. And about 18,000 copies of Dianetics in every language you could think of. And so we're talking, and she says, well, you have to put on one of these N95 masks. We can't let you in without that. Okay, no problem. So I grabbed the N95 mask. Well, first I had to sanitize. She made sure of that. And I grabbed one of the masks and I take my mask off. She sees my face and all of a sudden it's, she looks to the guy to her right and they're talking in Japanese. And next thing you know, I see him go like this. And that's when she looks at me and she says, well, I'm sorry, but you haven't been in country long enough to be cleared to be inside the building. And I'm like, wait a minute. There's no law like that. I talked to them at Japanese customs. Every place I've been to, no one's asked me how long I've been in the country. By the way, how do you know how long I've been here?
Wow.
And that was the thing is I left. I didn't make a scene on it or anything, but I thought it was really interesting as I walked out, I'm immediately on the phone with Aaron Smith-Levin. Hey, I just got told I had to leave the Tokyo org. And he goes, oh yeah, they probably emailed your photograph out to people. They knew I was in Asia because I had live streamed from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, a couple days before.
Wow.
And I put a big thing up about live from ? So they knew that there were probably only two places I could go in Asia. That would be either in Bangkok where they have an org, or it would be in Tokyo where they have an org. The rest of the countries, they don't have it. So
yeah, and to close out the show, John, that proves they have real-time 24/7 intelligence network operating, and they were definitely tracking you. And when you went to Tokyo org, you were 86th. Throw the SP out of here.
It was that, but I wear it as a badge of honor. I love it.
Of course.
Before we shut everything down, folks, if you have any questions, go ahead and get them up there.
Yeah.
Please don't do super chats, because every video that I do gets hit with some kind of report or community guideline violation, completely demonetizes it. The other night, Tampa B Man, you did such wonderful, all these wonderful super chats, but because they demonetized it, I'll never see a penny of it. Now I'm going to go ahead and take care of Chad on his because you donated it for him, and that's just the proper thing to do. But if you're going to do this, please go to the coffee site. Goldie puts up the links in there and it's in the description as well. I would much rather you do that than give the money to this streaming service that's going to take the money and it'll never go where it needs to go. Secondly, any money that you do give in super chats or things like that all I use that for is to upgrade my equipment for doing this. The new LED lighting I have behind me here, the new camera, those things, that's where that money goes. So I appreciate every one of you that do the super chats. I truly do, but I don't want you to just waste your money on it. If you have a question, just put it in parentheses, question, and then go with it from there. And we'll get them up there. And here is, let me make sure.
There's Nasty Nathaniel. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, we're gonna get him in a minute. He keeps going to Canada. I don't know if I really want to talk to him. From Sid Whittle. Jeff, will you be at the Masterson sentencing?
Absolutely, I'll be at the Masterson sentencing. Yes, I will be. I'll be reporting on it. Yeah,
I was about to say you're going to be reporting on both your channel and on the your blog as well, correct?
Yeah, I'll just do a live from the courthouse. Yeah,
excellent.
You know what's funny? John, is when I go downtown to cover Scientology in court, I always have to stop and ask myself, what's today? Is it civil or criminal? Which courthouse am I going to?
Yeah, that's the thing.
Civil or criminal? What is it today?
Well, they keep popping up in both. So
yeah,
I can't wait for Leah's case. That's going to be amazing.
Yeah, it is.
Nasty Nathaniel, Jeffrey, will you ever publish the video of when the squirrel busters showed up at your house?
You know what? I don't know if I have video of that, Nasty Nathaniel. They did show up, and if I have the video, that was a long time ago. I will publish it if I can find it. If I have it, I don't recall if I have it. So if I do, I'd definitely publish it.
Let's see here. Emily Case, is that just Oso reporting them? He hasn't said anything that should. That's the thing, Emily, is that I am. Jeff and I had talked about it. I use acronyms for certain things because number one, I don't want to be offensive to anybody that's watching this channel. Number two, I try to leave vulgarity, anything out of my comments. Yet the minute that my video posts live, there's a strike against me. I don't know if it's AI. I don't know who it is. I won't be surprised if this one gets hit. But, YouTube won't tell me who it is. And all they say is that it violates community guidelines. So let's see. And Concept Machine, there were a couple of people who had asked this question about the RICO Act. And as it pertains to cults. I don't think in this situation they need to use a RICO for cults. I believe that we have enough evidence that we can show that there would be clear RICO violations within the COS.
Well, yeah. Let me jump on that concept
Mhm.
machine. Good question.
Yes, very good question.
RICO, you have to have at least 2 predicate crimes.
Mhm.
So tax evasion, money laundering. So I'll say this: Gary Cardone, Grant Cardone's twin brother, is facing a civil RICO. It's pretty serious. It's posted on my blog. It's civil RICO, and it's alleging wire fraud. And there's another predicate crime, mail fraud, and one more. So to make a RICO, you'd have to have predicate crimes. I think it would be more on like it. I don't think it would happen because the church is pretty clean with its money. Now, I'm not ruling it out, but you have to have predicate crimes, and those are one reason I keep an eye on the church. It could happen overseas for sure, where I think they really try to get away with as much as they can. Here in the U.S., things like human trafficking, a possibility. I definitely think they're racketeering, but under the guise of religion, it's the law is really different. So I would like to talk to, maybe that's a question for Zach, who could suss that out
Yeah.
more. Because I'm not a lawyer. But
And
it's a
I've been
great
in
question.
talk with Zach Morgan. We actually want to get him on here, and we're going to do one specifically with him, and then bring him into the work with Jeff and I doing the live stream. So we'll get Zach in here. He's an attorney. I'm not, and he knows a lot better of some of these laws than I would know.
Sure.
So, and Deviant, I've got your question started. I'm going to bring it up in a little bit here. Let's see here. Do you have any follow-up on the PIs following Vanessa of degraded daughters?
Can't comment on that, but thank you for the question. I'm sure you can understand.
That was one question. I didn't know if you were going to be able to comment on it or not. How about Bob Ferris? Would you be able to make any comment on that?
Likewise, I'm unable to comment on it. I'm sure you can understand.
Okay. Let's see. Deviant Outcast. I'm promoting the use of domestic terrorist group in reference to the Church of Scientology. I find it accurate to a T, and I believe it would wake up officials. What's your take? And that's for both of us.
Well, I think it's very much there's some fine lines, fine delineations in law. Again, I'm not a lawyer. When you're dealing with militia groups, paramilitary groups, sovereign citizens, Scientology has all of those in it. This is a generalization, but it's accurate. I can actually support it. By and large, there's a strong sovereign citizen movement. There's an anti-tax movement. There's a very much gun-loving movement. And that's no offense to anyone who's pro Second Amendment. I'm just saying Scientologists as a class. You can actually see Grant Cardone and his wife Elena. They went down and took classes on how to fire on people from a helicopter. That's their form of fun. Elena Cardone loves guns. So as a domestic terrorist group, I would like that definition to stick. I would actually like to, because domestic terrorist groups are very often involved in, like, say, radical Christian identity groups in America. And that comes out of Ruby Ridge, out of Waco. And so this question is outstanding to ask. I personally view Scientology as a psychoterrorist transnational criminal organization that has a retail front end. And by analogy, I always said the mob had the pizza parlors, back in the 80s to launder money through. So I think there's the part of, and I've always said this, there's the part of Scientology you see, and there's the part of Scientology you don't see. The part you don't see, but we're exposing more and more in SPTV and through other mediums, is that psychoterrorist criminal organization. And I think that if there's going to be an undoing of Scientology, it will be fair game. And it will be something that happens. the conviction of Danny Masterson is a big deal. This is one of the most staggering things that's ever happened to Scientology, because that has the potential to open things. As Aaron Smith Levin has opined, and I agree with him, Danny could decide to flip. He could very much say, if I'm going down for 30 to life, I'm taking everyone with me.
Yeah,
and I hope he
amen.
does that. I hope he does that.
I think that he, me personally, I don't think he's mentally strong enough to handle what he's facing. And that's a very easy way I'll give you all the dirt you need. Make sure I don't go to prison.
Yeah.
That's a very good position to have on it. And I agree with what you were saying about how Aaron had brought that up on his channel.
No, John, right before the verdicts were read, I was outside the courtroom, probably standing 6 feet away from Danny.
Oh,
and
wow.
as I said before, we were all waiting to go in. I'm like 6 feet from him. It's crowded. And he's nervous. And I believe that they were going to convict on 2 and hang on 1. Okay. That was my belief. Yeah. And I was looking at a man. He looked nervous. I'm thinking, I'm seeing him in his last minutes of freedom before he goes away forever. So I think it would be in his own interest, this is just my opinion, for him to give it all up, to talk about what went on, who, what, when, where, how they covered it up, what he did. He has nothing to lose at this point.
Right.
He has absolutely nothing to do. I had nothing to lose, rather. And I think that's what the church is very afraid of. Because if you're looking at 30 to life, you might as well take down the rest of them with you.
Yeah. And I think something that a lot of people don't think about in these situations is that, I heard a lot of people are upset that his attorneys are filing these appeals and everything. That is their job. Attorneys must put up the most valid defense of their clients that they can, as long as they stay within the laws and the regulations that they have to uphold. That's their job. And you can't take it personally that they're doing their job. So, please understand that the attorneys for Danny, they're doing what they're supposed to. And I find it really interesting that a lot of the attorneys working for Scientology aren't actual members.
Yeah, no, I mean, they're coached by OSA, and they're instructed, and they take certain classes and things, but they're not. Scientology doesn't have any in-house talent.
Yeah.
They've had to outsource so much of it.
And a witness wanted to make sure, looking forward to your thoughts on everything and your video on the Masterson verdict. It was so good. So
well, thank you. That's very kind. When I made that video, it was very raw. I didn't do any intro, any editing. I have to tell you, John, and everyone listening, my heart went out to the Jane Does.
Oh, yes.
The trial was pretty brutal. They were so courageous to go through it twice, through that ordeal. And so I remember when Masterson was convicted and put in cuffs by a female deputy, and that rage, that sense of entitlement he had. I was glad to see him taken away by the deputies, and I knew it was going to happen next in processing.
Oh, yeah.
But I was so, it takes a lot out of you. Sometimes being an activist, speaking out, takes a lot out of you. It's a demand on you emotionally. And you know that.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes it's thankless, but you're doing it for the right thing, to take down this cult, this destructive, soul-killing cult. We're doing the right thing. But when I made that video, I just wanted to share the very human side of what went on.
Right. And, that's why when I was talking about how I want to get the transcripts of the Detective Reyes and the interview with the Jane Doe, as someone who has personally interviewed more than I ever wanted to, victims of SA, one of the first things I've always made sure of is that I find a way to make them feel as secure as possible being around me.
Yeah.
And I want them to understand that I am open. I'm listening to them. It's not an interrogation. I am there simply to get the information to press forward with the case and see if we have enough evidence to do it. And, that I find it so alarming that a detective, especially a female detective, from my understanding, would be so brash and be so hard on a potential SA victim. To me, that's disgusting. And I think it's, that's something that needs to be pointed out. That's why I want those transcripts, so that I can go ahead and move forward with it.
Well, I watched her testify, and I agree with you. Yeah.
It's I just, and that's one of the things a lot of people don't understand is in the law enforcement world, a lot of people become very jaded. And I think one of the best statements of it is the worst day of your life is another day in the office for me. And that's a police officer's perspective. So there are a lot of people, you get just so much you're lied to on a daily basis, over and over and over again. And you get to the point where it's hard to believe what a lot of people are saying to you. And, I've said it a million times. It's having my wife as my sin eater, and listening to me and talking to me and being very blunt sometimes with the way she talks to me about it. It helped to keep me from becoming that jaded, hard person that everything's negative in my life. And I think that, that's something a lot of people don't talk about. We talk about PTSD as for so many other people, but law enforcement, firefighters, EMTs, the amount of trauma that is placed on them on a daily basis is ridiculous.
It is.
So, yeah, I just, like I said, I think that if this is the way that this detective went into it, if it's the way I'm thinking it is, maybe it's time to get some kind of counseling, some kind of social work, something like that, to help break that continuing cycle of being so maniacal, being so jaded, and being a law enforcement person. Let's see. Manuel Lubian. Also, think about setting up. I don't use Patreon. My daughter does what's something called VTubing, where she does video games and stuff like that. And Patreon, with the way that they handle all the financial end of it, I don't want anything to do with it. I like things simple. Keep it simple, stupid. To me or Goldie, has YouTube ever given you any idea why you are vitalizing? No, they won't. I don't get anything about that. And this is the link to Jeffrey's blog. It's dirtycopsandpis.com. So
yeah, that's my other blog, and that's really very interesting. If you want to read about Michael Moretti for Cruz, Yanti Green, Dan Rubikoff, who was the celebrity polygrapher on the Steve Wilkos show. And that's quite a story. We'll do another video on it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And you got to remember, folks, this is just the first in a series we're going to be doing when it comes to private investigators and other things with Scientology. This is to break things in. Plus, we have the, that text it's being presented out there for pretty much the first time that anyone's going to be able to see it. We wanted to make sure we got that out there and that you could see it in a presentation format that allows you to ask some questions about it and think about it a little bit deeper. Let's see. A lot of people are saying that they don't think Danny will do it, but I think he's lived too pampered. He's had a very easy life as someone in Hollywood, and now he's going to the reality of jail. And I think that's going to be a real awakening situation for him.
Well, there's no upside for him not to do it.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I'm sorry. There's no downside for him not to do it. He's already been convicted, and there could be an upside for him to do it, even if it's just to expose the system. So we'll see. We'll see. It'll be interesting.
I won't be surprised if he does. So, Peggy P, social workers also suffer from secondary trauma. And I do not deny that at all. I agree 100%. You're a sin eater yourself. You're taking on the traumatic emotions of someone's life. But where I'm coming from is the standpoint that for since its inception in law enforcement, especially, if you seek psychiatric or social worker care, it's pretty much a black mark on you, and it has been for years. Finally, they're starting to come around and understand that this is helpful for law enforcement officers. But for since its inception up till the last couple of years, if you sought psychiatric help or a social worker, then it pretty much was you're going to stay a patrol officer or you're going to stay on the beat for the rest of your career. Your advancement's not going to happen. So that's I understand completely, and yes, I agree. Social workers do take on secondary
They
PTSD,
do. They
but
do. And like you, I'm John, I'm lucky to have a very strong, loving wife who I couldn't do what I do without Karen. I absolutely couldn't.
and
You know,
I
you
mirror that
I'm
completely.
I'm blessed that way, and I married up in life as well.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I married much above my pay scale
Yeah.
on that as it comes to quality of person and, just being who they are. I'm much better than me. So she's smarter, way better looking. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm trying to see if we got here. Okay, this is from Manuel. What do you think about this new crop of officers today that either unnecessarily assault potential suspects or the officers that abuse innocent others? You know, if you've watched any of my content where I show like the sovereign citizens and things like that, if I think an officer's wrong in what they're doing, I'm going to call them out. I think that one of the problems is that a lot of people think is because you see these videos pop up on YouTube and things like that, that is a cross section of law enforcement in a whole. That is a minute percentage of the officers that are actually out there working the job. Most officers are out there to support the community, make the community a safer place. They want their community to be better. The getting crime off the streets, getting your crime rates down makes the job easier for you as a police officer. So, I think that it's such a minute cross section of law enforcement.
Oh, can I comment on that question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Karen and I are very pro law enforcement. But having said that, that's why I started my blog, Dirty Cops and PIs, because there are dirty cops and PIs.
Most certainly.
And those people need to be identified. So, yes, there's a need for better screening, training, and that's happening. But, yeah, that's why I started my blog, because there are some bad apples in my field. There's some really dirty PIs, and there's good ones. I've, like I said before, I've helped find missing persons who needed mental health treatment because they were on drugs. I've been in Skid Row, finding more than a few missing people, to get them in for their families, to get them drug treatment, off the streets. So,
there's an incident that happened, and this was well over 30 years ago when it originally happened. There was a woman who went missing from our city. And the detective who was in charge of it did their due diligence. They did everything they could to find this person, but the case went cold. There was nothing they could do. He couldn't figure out where she was. And for the rest of this officer's career, the family dogged this officer, calling him pathetic, just saying horrible things about him. Then come to find, after he retires, they continue on this crusade of trying to make this officer be held to a responsibility level that he couldn't be held to. He died still thinking he had failed this family. Then they find out that actually this woman had passed away 2 days after she'd been reported missing. She was held as a Jane Doe.
Oh.
They didn't have DNA records, those kinds of things back then. It wasn't until 20 plus years later that they actually were able to check the DNA of this person and find out who it was. And this officer had gone to his grave. He died of cancer. It came on very sudden onset. He passed away from cancer thinking he had failed this family.
Yeah.
And these are the kind of things that we deal with as law enforcement officers. Our failures take an immense emotional toll on us, because we're supposed to be the guardians. We're supposed to be the protectors. and those kinds of things. Believe me, there are cases that I had that probably may never be solved, but I still think about them.
Yeah.
And I still wonder, could I have done this? Could I have done that? And, when I go back and I look at it, there wasn't anything more I could do about it, but it's still going to weigh on me as a failure as a law enforcement officer. So,
Sure.
when people want to say, well, bad cops, this, bad cops, that, as Jeffrey could tell you, I don't, let's call out the bad police officers. Let's call out the ones who are doing the things they shouldn't.
Yeah.
But don't lump every officer in together as we're all bad. I hold my integrity and my honor in very high regard. My wife will tell you that if I give you my word, I'm going to make it happen. If I got to pay out of my pocket to take care of something I promised you, then I'm going to do it. Unfortunately, here as of late, because I've had to restart my treatments with my oncologist, a lot of things have had to hit the back burner, simply because after my treatments, I'm literally a zombie. Yeah. So I'm, we're doing what we can. We'll be back on our feet soon enough, taking care of things. And then, of course, this past weekend, oh my gosh, Jeff, I've explained that to you about the storms and all that. My goodness.
Yeah.
Let's see. Destone Salazar, and welcome, Destone. Really interesting to hear about investigation from Ellie and PI Percent. That's exactly why we're doing this. It's a great collaboration. You have two different forces that are coming together, working together cohesively. And we're going to give you our takes on it and our information. Jeff's got got decades of being in the private investigation field. I've got decades of being a law enforcement officer. So we both have a very good.
Let me correct that. I don't have decades in.
Oh, you
Chief.
don't?
No. I mean, I left corporate, went into consulting, then went into PI. So, many years. But in my corporate career, what I specialized in I got real interested in white collar financial crime. So I have a nose for it, but it was after I retired from corporate that I got into it, started getting my way into it. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah.
So,
and Tampa B, cat wouldn't do any good for me. Roscoe keeps me good and occupied, and I like my snakes. So
yeah,
that's, well, Jeff, we're hitting on 2 hours here now, and I think this is a good step off point for us. I am truly honored to have you up.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Hey, I just want to ask you,
yes, sir.
I'm just an old hippie hanging around, but I just got to tell you, I'm looking for this guy, David Miscavige, 5'1", I think about 115. And everywhere I go to give him these papers, they say he doesn't work there. So just can't serve the guy.
When they actually come out with a warrant for him, it's hard to hide because they have a right to go in and go after him. So
isn't a warrant so much better?
Oh, yes.
So much better than service a subpoena. And someday my hope is that we see the little Keebler elf in an orange jumpsuit.
Oh, yeah. The Keebler King and his army of Keebler commandos.
Yeah.
So
let me ask you, Chief. Now, if I'm just hanging around Los Feliz and I look like an old hippie, like I could be a musician, I could, be someone, you wouldn't think I was a PI.
Oh, no. It's like me. Anywhere I go, the statement is you're either you're a police officer, retired police officer, or you're military.
Yeah. So you look like a cop. It's just written all over you.
Yeah, that's the problem. I have that look. I've kept my hair like this since I was in the military. It's just so much easier.
Yeah, no kidding. Like hair care products are not cheap. I got to tell you.
Well, when with my family being predominantly Native American, I had long hair before I left for basic training, and once I got that the head shaved for the first time, and I was like, oh goodness, I can wash my hair with the same bar of soap I'm using to wash the rest of me. I don't have to pay for any of that stuff. Yeah, it's just so much easier. Now I find as it starts growing, even at this length right here, it's like I overheat because I'm not used to having the hair there. So it's
anyway.
It's great stuff. But Jeff, thank you so much. I
Oh,
look forward
pleasure.
to our next one.
Yeah.
We're going to continue on. We've started off with the origins of it, and then talking about Leah, the threat against Leah. We're going to go deeper into it, and as we go, we're going to bring us up to date on how they are working now. And we're going to be looking into a lot of the different techniques that they're using nowadays as compared to what they used to do. Again, sir, thank you very much. Let's bring our buddy Clearwater Chad back in here. Yeah, put your shirt back on. And
Hey guys.
Hey,
folks,
Chad.
make sure you say hi to Chad. Jeffrey, again, I can't thank you enough. And thank Karen.
Likewise. Thank you, Chief.
Like I said, I am so impressed with both of you. You're both an immense fountain of information.
Thank you. That's very
and
kind.
you're just great people. So you have any closing comments for us there, Jeffrey?
No, it was a pleasure to be on. I look forward to doing some more collabs with you. I do want to do a panel where I bring on one of my experts on gaslighting.
Oh, yeah.
She's phenomenal. She's
phenomenal.
Let's
definitely do it.
So I want to do a show on gaslighting and what to do about it, responses. And she is an expert. I want to bring her on. I want to do a panel with you.
Exactly. And folks, again, as Jeffrey said, private investigators don't have authority to do anything to you. Their job is to investigate.
Yeah, we're just civilians. Yeah. So don't be afraid of a civilian.
Do not let them intimidate you. They can, so they do like I do. If you're worried about them getting your information from your trash, I burn all the papers that have any information like that. And I fill my trash bags full of Roscoe's wonderful droppings that he puts out there. So, you
shred everything and put in your dog's business in it. And
I actually, I'm going to be bringing out a video on it. One of the things is I have wood burning stoves. We have a fireplace. So I make actual paper pucks that I use to burn in those. So, don't put your information out there if you're worried about someone getting it.
And if you want to have some fun, you could print off 22 pictures of David Miscavige and put them in the trash.
That's awesome.
And just leave the PIs to figure that one out.
If you want to Photoshop them, do some crazy things with it,
Sir, we found these 22 photos of you in the trash.
When did you start wearing bikinis? And Chad, do you have any closing thoughts for us tonight?
Just a reminder for everyone to take my 10X program, Paul.
And Chad has a great thing that he does with the Nerdy Bunch, which are never ends. Like myself, never having been part of Scientology, but someone who does want to expose what is going on and the dangers to society itself. Folks, again, thank you so much. I appreciate each and every one of you. I'm sorry if I didn't get you to your questions, but we've only got so much time and I don't want to take up your entire night. Jeffrey's a very busy person. Chad, of course, now is retired since he's built his $1 billion corporation off of his 10X teachings.
That's right, Paul.
No kidding.
We can't wait to see you on it.
I guess I could say one thing. And all the SPTV creators, if you're or potential creators, if you're looking to get your toes a little, you're looking to go on, you don't know if you want to go live. But my pre-show every Monday is a good opportunity to see if that's something you want to do, because we're growing the SPTV network, and that's really a great thing. We want to keep it going.
Yeah, and folks, one of the things I've really appreciated about Chad is that when he and I first started collaborating, and he was just trying to figure out, how am I going to grow my channel? How am I going to grow my channel? I was like, come on, let's get you on here. Let's get you exposed to more people. He in turn is doing the same thing for other creators. Yeah. We're both very open to helping anyone who's new into this. If you got questions, email us. We'll help you out the best we can. Like tonight, Jeffrey was wondering how to live stream on his channel. I have no idea. I've never done it before. Chad knows. And Goldie knows. So, that's the thing. Folks, as always, life is short. You get one shot at it, and you need to make it count. So until next time, good night, and thank you for joining us.